Hi, my name's Ishan Raval, and I'm developing a novel framework of what is good, or what the good is. Welcome to my YouTube channel, which is one of the media through which I'll be sharing these ideas as they develop. In this video, I'm just going to be introducing this project, talking about what it's exactly about, why that's important, and how I'll be going about it. So let me start by unpacking really what the question is. What is meant by an inquiry into what is good or what the good is. Now, in our common language, we tend to use the word good in the sense of, well, let's take the very example of this explanation. You might think that this explanation is either good or not good. In that sense, what it means is that this explanation may be good for something, say for the sake of creating understanding. But about that, you might ask, well, what's that good for? Why is it good to create some kind of understanding? And the answer to that might be, well, that's good because a certain kind of understanding can impel a certain kind of action or encourage a certain kind of behavior. But then you might ask again, well, why is a certain kind of behavior, a certain kind of existence good? And you see where I'm going with this. All of these questions ultimately lead to what is ultimately good. And that's the question that this project is asking. What is ultimately or intrinsically good? What is non-instrumentally good? What is good for there to exist, not because it's useful for something, but because it is itself good for and in its very existence. Now, this is a really important question because if there is something that is just good, that is intrinsically in itself good, then we would want to exist in a way such that we can make there be more of it, or more of it is a very quantitative way of putting it, but we would want to exist in a way that just actualizes it, that facilitates the existence of what's good, because that would be good, because it's the good we're talking about. Now, apart from existing as individuals that actualize the good in our own ways, whether in and through our own being or through our actions in the external world, we may also want to live in a societal order, a social order, a civilizational order that is about and for the good. And that's why this question is especially pertinent today, because the sovereign dominant societal order of much of the world today, at least in the West, the dominant worldview of modern society says that the good is feeling good. We valorize happiness and well-being, however that might be defined for a particular individual, as what is truly good. That is actually a false notion of what is good. Our entire world is organized around this, increasingly so, but it's ultimately an illusion. And that's actually at the bottom of so many of the problems that we're facing in the world today. From those of the psychosocial front to more nitty-gritty problems of looming existential and catastrophic risks that are intensifying this century. Rather than live in a society that is for what is not really good, we might rather want to live in a society, in a social order that actually has the conception of the good clear and correct. Now, there are some currents in contemporary sociopolitical thought, post-political thought often, say certain segments of the right, what's called today perhaps the dissident right or the new right, as well as the current of post-liberalism, that are saying that, maybe the good isn't just accomplished or actualized by this sort of laissez-faire sort of individuality, sociality, and governance that reigns increasingly supreme in at least the West, and increasingly so also around the world. But apart from those tendencies in the right that say that what is good can be explained just through traditional religious wisdom, there isn't that much of a positive foundational framework of what the world can actually be for. Now, a lot of the things that I've been thinking about have strong alignment with age-old religious and spiritual knowledge. However, I do think that it's not only feasible, but also valuable to explain the good, explain what is ultimately valuable that we could exist for in a fashion that is considered secular. Also, of considerable interest to me, a certain segment of the tech sector or tech superorganism has been in recent years affirming and valorizing building as something that is good, and the disposition towards the world that wants to engage with it in a very atoms and bits sort of sensibility, a very productive, creative sensibility, and create an amazing world. And I think that sentiment is really interesting and is actually getting towards what is really good, but it is still lacking a scaffolding of concepts that come together in a sound and rigorous fashion to legitimize it and then impel it as fully as it could be impelled. So there are vectors in the world that are saying that we need something better than just being oriented around the pursuit of positive affect, generally put, which is by itself ultimately meaningless. Or that are saying that we need to do better than how the sclerotic governance that is becoming all the more rampant across at least the West and is being normalized for the rest of the world, and which is completely unable to come up with the efficacy and strength needed to confront the challenges of the century. There are vectors that are saying that, and there are vectors that have an intuition about the sorts of dispositions and orientations towards the world that are actually good, but there isn't a sound conceptual scaffolding for these ideas that can serve as the ground for a civilizational order that is oriented around the good. It is such a ground that this project hopes to provide. Of course, in attempting to provide that, I'm trying to solve an age-old philosophical problem. And neither are my ideas that I've developed so far devoid of influence from past or present philosophical tendencies, nor are successful results necessarily guaranteed. However, I've been traversing this terrain for several years now, and in the ground I've covered, through what I've seen to not be the case and through the things that have lingered on to be apparent as being the case, I do have reason to believe that I am onto something with this framework of ideas that I'm developing. So let me now talk about how I'm going to be putting them out there. At the start, I mentioned that this isn't the only medium through which I'm going to be sharing my ideas. Apart from video, I also do write. In fact, the writing is as central to this project, at least as central to this project as are the videos. The primary place in which I publish my writings is my newsletter, Vichara. You can find the link for that in the description below. Now, I write long. I write with the substantiveness, precision, and rigor that such an undertaking behooves. So to complement that, in these videos, I hope to basically give summaries. I hope to do casual paper presentations, as it were. You can think of the writing as a place where I develop a full, thorough illustration of the forest with all of its trees and how they add up together. But over here, in these videos, I just hope to give a roadmap of the forest, covering its landmarks and the overall gist it adds up to. While I intend to keep the newsletter purely to philosophy, I may also sometimes share videos with opinions about matters of the world, about politics and economics and geopolitics and culture that emerge directly from the philosophical concepts as they're coming together, that are entailed by this philosophical framework. As and when I feel like expressing such worldly opinions in writing, the place where I'll be most frequently doing that is Twitter. The link to my profile is also in the description. So that's all as a matter of introduction. Starting next week, we'll be getting straight into philosophy. Specifically, the next video will talk about the shortcomings of the modern conception of the good. That is the idea that good is feeling good. Good is the state of happiness or well-being for individuals. Now, this seems like a very intuitive and natural view of what is good, and because we are fish and water to it. But we'll be parsing through that view, seeing how, while it isn't the case that there's nothing to do with happiness as far as the good goes, it isn't only that. There's also much more to it. There's an objective component. And through seeing the shortcomings in the dominant conception, we'll just start to be able to grasp at what the good fully and truly is. See you next week.